They gave my sister $900,000 and used my name to hide the fraud. I didn't find out until I overheard my dad say, "Lauren, she'll be fine at the bakery." That was the moment everything snapped. I'm Lauren Chen, the daughter they ignored, the name they used, and the one they never thought would fight back. But I did more than fight. I exposed them and took back everything they tried to bury. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. I was halfway down the stairs when I heard it. Dad's voice. Calm. Clipped. Like he was reciting numbers instead of speaking about his own daughters. We can't fund both girls. Sophia has a future. Lauren can stay at the bakery. My foot hovered above the bottom step. The hallway light flickered just enough to throw shadows on the faded Thanksgiving garland taped to the wall. I clutched the railing and held my breath, hoping I'd misheard. But then he spoke again, like it was a decision already made. She doesn't need the money. She's steady, practical. Let her run the shop. Sophia, on the other hand, has a wedding coming. We can't miss that opportunity. The wine glasses clinked. Mom gave a soft, muffled reply, her usual role in these talks. But we promised to support both. Lauren's been applying to graduate schools. She even got into one in Seattle. She's not built for that. Let's be realistic. Besides, Dad said, pausing as if calculating, using her name for the secondary account simplifies the taxes. The scratch of a pen followed, then silence. I'd like to say I stood tall and marched into the room right then. That I slammed the door, yelled, threw something, anything to prove I existed, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, while the smell of roasted turkey and sweet potato casserole floated through the hallway. It was all so normal, so painfully staged. Earlier that week, Mom had kissed my forehead while folding laundry and said, "Don't worry, sweetie, we'll support both of you." I believed her. I always did. I backed up the stairs slowly, careful not to let them creak. My room was exactly how I'd left it. Neat, quiet, like a hotel room you check into but never fully belong in. My college fund application sat on the desk. The word pending glowed on the printout, a hopeful thing I hadn't thrown away yet. I picked up a pen and scratched my name out from the bottom of the form, hard, until the paper tore. Downstairs, the oven timer beeped. Laughter floated up. Sophia's voice, bright and polished, like the silverware Mom only brought out for guests. I stared at my closet for a long time before pulling out my coat and boots. As I stepped into the hallway, I saw Sophia at the top of the stairs, arms crossed over her velvet dress. "You're not staying for dinner?" She was wearing a designer coat, the one she bought after her last trip to New York. Her hair curled perfectly at the ends. "I'm not feeling well," I said flatly. "Mom made your favorite, mac and cheese with Gruyere. She even added truffle oil. You've been so tense lately. This could be nice, you know?" I let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Nice? For who? "Come on, Lauren. What's really going on?" she asked, tilting her head with that polished concern that never reached her eyes. I stared at her for a beat too long and then said quietly, "Everything's perfect. Just like you. Just like this family." That froze her. Her eyes narrowed just a little. She started to say something, but I was already turning for the door. From behind, Dad's voice rang out loud and sharp. "Lauren, come back here right now." I stopped with one hand on the doorknob and turned around slowly. Mom and Dad were standing near the staircase, Sophia a few steps behind them. "Why?" I asked. "So you can explain why you used my name without asking. Why Sophia's wedding is worth 6 figures and my future is worth a cash register and a thank you card." "You were eavesdropping," Dad said, his jaw tight. "Yes," I replied, meeting his eyes, "and I'm glad I did." Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Let's not do this now, honey. Please sit down. We're still a family." "A family?" I repeated, my voice catching. Number this is a company. You have your favorite employee, your investment plan, your PR strategy. I'm just the one you keep around for optics." Sophia looked hurt, but she didn't deny it. None of them did. "You will not walk out on us," Dad barked. I looked at him one last time, not with hate, just with the kind of clarity that burns. "You already did, years ago. You just didn't notice." I opened the door. The cold hit me like a wave, but it felt cleaner than the air inside. Outside, the rain had started, soft but steady. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just knew I couldn't stay. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The streets blurred by, familiar signs glowing under flickering lamplight. Every turn felt instinctual until I saw it. The small white porch light glowing through the mist like a memory I'd nearly forgotten. Aunt Grace's house. I pulled to the curb and sat there, engine running, watching the curtains flutter. She was probably asleep. It was late, but somehow the porch light was still on. Aunt Grace opened the door like she'd been expecting me all along. No questions, no surprise, just a soft, tired smile and the familiar scent of peppermint tea floating out into the night. "Tea first," she said gently. "We'll deal with everything after." She led me inside, and for a moment I forgot how cold and wet I was. The house was exactly how I remembered it from that summer when I was 10. Same worn rug in the foyer, same creaky floorboard near the hallway. A painting of sunflowers still hung in the dining room, though I knew it wasn't a painting. It was the fence I'd painted myself that summer, now immortalized in a photo, framed with a note in Aunt Grace's handwriting. "Summer of Light 2010. She handed me a towel and pointed toward the couch. "I'll bring the good mugs, not the chipped ones. Unless you want the chipped one, yours is still in the cabinet." I managed a smile. "The sunflower one." She nodded, disappearing into the kitchen. I sat down slowly, still wrapped in my coat, hands trembling but finally loosening. The warmth of the living room, the quiet hum of the old space heater near the fireplace, the soft ticking of the wall clock, it all wrapped around me tighter than any blanket could. A few minutes later, she returned with 2 mugs, mine with the faded sunflower, hers with a pale blue swirl, and a plate of cinnamon bread she had somehow warmed without drying out. She didn't ask why I'd come. She didn't ask anything. She just sat beside me, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to give me space. The tea was strong and sweet, with just a hint of honey. "I left," I finally said, the words brittle in my throat. I heard them talking. Dad said, "Sophia's wedding was worth more than my future, that I should stay at the bakery. They used my name on some tax thing, like I was convenient." She didn't gasp or interrupt. She just reached for her tea and nodded slightly, as if confirming something she'd long suspected. "I shouldn't be surprised," I whispered, but it still felt like a punch. Aunt Grace leaned back, her eyes resting on the photo above the mantel. Mom and her as teenagers, barefoot in the backyard, laughing. "You were always the one who asked the hard questions," she said softly, "even when it made people uncomfortable. Your mom, she never learned how to do that." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that isn't heavy, just necessary. Then she got up without a word, walked to her old desk in the corner, and opened the top drawer. She pulled out a thick envelope tied with a faded blue ribbon and placed it gently on my lap. "I was going to give you this when you graduated college," she said, "but I think now is the time." I looked at her, confused. The envelope was heavy. Inside were folded documents, some bank statements, and a small, battered passbook from a credit union I didn't recognize. I opened it and stared at the number on the last line, $124,300. "I've been saving since the year you were born," she said quietly. "Every birthday, every Christmas, even loose change from my retirement fund. Your parents had a fund for Sophia. I made one for you." I didn't cry because of the money. I cried because someone had believed in me that quietly, that consistently, for that long. My hands shook as I tried to speak, but she reached over and gently placed her hand on mine. "You don't have to say anything, Lauren. I saw you growing up, doing homework under a flickering light while they took Sophia to piano lessons, working weekends, getting straight A's. You don't need permission to move forward." We sat like that for a while. No more words. Just her hand on mine and the sound of the tea cooling in our mugs. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I stayed up in the guest room, the one with the old quilt and the window that looked out over her tiny backyard garden. I opened my laptop, heart pounding, and searched for programs I never let myself believe I could afford. Business administration, entrepreneurship. I found a school called Westbridge, not far from Seattle. Practical, flexible, real. Their application deadline was in 5 days. I filled out every field carefully, rereading each word like it might change everything. And somewhere around 1 a.m., I clicked Submit. I sat back, staring at the blinking cursor on the confirmation page. Then I reached for the envelope again and held it close, not just because of the money, but because of what it meant, that someone had seen me, had chosen me. 3 days later, I sat at the kitchen table with Aunt Grace, helping her sort coupons and bills when the email pinged on my phone. Subject, Admission Decision, Westbridge Business School. I tapped it open. My chest tightened. My eyes scanned the screen. "Congratulations, Lauren Chen. Welcome to Westbridge." My phone buzzed for the 5th time before I finally looked at it. I was hunched over a marketing textbook, sipping cold coffee and picking at the last piece of a bagel that had been sitting out since morning. 5 messages blinked in a row. "Turn on the news. Jason's arrested. Sophia's name is mentioned." For a second, I thought I was reading someone else's nightmare. I grabbed the remote, turned on the tiny TV mounted on the wall across from the futon, and flipped to the local news. There it was. Jason Lee, handcuffed, led out of a sleek office building in downtown Portland, hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, face blank. The headline at the bottom screamed, "Multi-million-dollar fraud, Chen family's future son-in-law under arrest." The reporter's voice was smooth and detached. "Sources confirm the FBI has been investigating Hamilton Equity Partners for over a year, citing illegal fund transfers, fake investor accounts, and manipulation of small business investments. Jason Lee, a managing director, is now in custody pending formal charges." Then came the line that made my stomach drop. "Sophia Chen, his longtime partner, is under internal review for potential knowledge of these actions." I didn't move. I didn't blink. The cracked corner of my phone screen reflected the TV light like shattered glass. For years, my family had painted Jason as the gold standard. Dad once called him the kind of man who builds legacies. I guess he didn't mean prison records. The phone rang. I didn't need to look. I already knew. "Lauren." Mom's voice spilled through the speaker before I even said hello. "Have you seen the news? It's all over every channel. Reporters are outside our house. People are calling nonstop. I don't know what to do." I stood and walked to the window, pulling aside the sheer curtain just enough to see the alley below. Nothing but trash bins and wet pavement. It was quiet here. Too quiet for what Mom was asking of me. "You need to calm down," I said, trying to keep my voice flat. "I can't," she cried. "They're saying Sophia might have known, that she was complicit. It's not true, Lauren. It can't be. She was just trying to help him." I didn't say anything. "We need help," she continued. "Your father and I. If we don't act fast, everything could fall apart. Do you still have that money? The one from Aunt Grace? Could you lend us some? Just until we get through this. That money is for my future, Mom, not to fix Sophia's mess." Her breath caught. "But you wouldn't even be in school without Grace. Shouldn't you use that chance to help your family, too?" I closed my eyes. I remembered Grace's words like they were stitched into my skin. You don't owe them for what they never gave. "I'm hanging up now," I said quietly. "I hope Sophia tells the truth. But this isn't mine to fix." I ended the call. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Dad. You need to understand something, he said, skipping any greeting. This affects all of us. Sophia's image is tied to ours. If she gets dragged into this, people will come for the Chen name. Then maybe it's time the Chen name stood on its own, I said, barely above a whisper. There's a job at your internship site, right? Admin work. Safe. Low profile. You could put in a word. They'd listen to you. You want me to recommend Sophia? He hesitated. Just enough for her to have a place to land, until this blows over. You told me I belonged in a bakery, I said, heat rising in my chest. And now you want me to fix your empire? There was silence, then a long sigh. I didn't mean that literally. You know I always wanted the best for you. No, Dad, you wanted what was convenient. Sophia was your prize. I was your insurance policy. You're being emotional, he snapped. I'm being honest. I hung up without waiting for a reply. The apartment was still. My textbook sat open on the counter next to a business card from my supervisor at the internship. I picked it up, stared at it, then put it back down. Not everything that glitters is gold. Sometimes it's just polished debt and lies. I walked over to my laptop, closed it slowly, then sank into the futon. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. I had never wanted Sophia to fail. But maybe I needed the pedestal to crack before I could finally step away from its shadow. The sky outside had gone pale, rain tapping gently on the glass. I wrapped myself in the thin blanket Aunt Grace had given me last winter. Worn, but warm. Honest. Just as I closed my eyes, the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The message was short. Lauren, it's me. Please, I need you. Sophia. The cafe smelled like burnt toast and reheated soup. Not unpleasant, just tired, like everything else inside. The windows were fogged with condensation, and outside the rain came down in thin sheets, soft but insistent. I spotted her right away, back booth, gray coat damp and wrinkled. Her hair, usually curled and glossy, now clung flat to her temples. There was a folder on the table in front of her, creased with the corner bent, like it had been clenched too many times. You came, Sophia whispered, barely looking up. I slid into the booth across from her and nodded, but didn't take off my coat. She tried to smile, but it collapsed halfway. I didn't know who else to call. We sat there for a moment. 2 cups of coffee steamed between us, untouched. Hers had gone cold. Mine I didn't bother with. Finally, she reached for the folder and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a document printed on stiff white paper, a yellow sticky note from the DA's office stuck to the top. They're offering me a deal, she said. No jail time if I testify, full immunity if I hand over everything. And will you? I asked. She blinked. I don't know. Sophia, I said, keeping my voice steady, you already do. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes weren't sharp anymore. They were soft, swollen at the edges, the kind of eyes that had seen too much without blinking. I knew something was wrong, she said, voice catching. Months ago, Jason's files weren't adding up. His emails started sounding careful. But when I asked, he just said it was normal. Everyone in finance does it. It's just strategy. And you believed him. I wanted to, she admitted. I wanted to believe that what we had built, what Mom and Dad had told everyone, was real, that we were the perfect couple, that I mattered. I let the silence hold between us. Her words weren't surprising, but they still scraped old wounds I thought had healed. They told me not to sign, she added, quieter now. Mom said it would disgrace the family. Dad didn't say anything, just looked at me like I had broken something he'd been polishing for years. She looked down at the page again. Her thumb smudged the ink near the signature line. I feel like I'm suffocating. Then stop holding your breath. Sophia flinched, just slightly. Easy for you to say. No, I said. It's not. I know what it feels like to be the one no one believes in. I know what it feels like to be used and discarded the second you ask for something back. But I didn't sign my name to lies." Her hands trembled. "I don't know who I am outside of them," she whispered. "I've spent my whole life trying to be who they wanted." I nodded. "Me too, until I stopped." She looked up. "What if I lose everything?" "You already have," I said gently. "Now you get to choose what you build next." She stared at the paper. The pen rolled slightly on the table. She reached out, picked it up, and hesitated. Her fingers hovered. "You either carry the lie," I said slowly, "or you face the storm and start over." The pen touched the paper. It took her 2 tries to steady her hand, but she signed. The ink blotched near the last letter. A smear trailed down the side of the page where her palm had pressed too hard. I watched her shoulders fall, like she'd dropped a weight she didn't even realize she was carrying. I leaned forward, voice quiet. "Not for them," I said. "Not for me. For yourself." Her eyes welled, but she didn't look away. "Do you think it'll ever stop hurting?" I shrugged. "Not all at once, but truth is lighter than shame." We sat there in silence, the 2 coffees now gone lukewarm, the paper between us drying. Eventually, she gathered the folder, closed it carefully, and tucked it into her bag like something sacred. Outside, the rain hadn't let up. It fell in long, silvery lines, pooling along the curb. As we stepped out under the small awning, Sophia turned to me. "Will you be there?" she asked, her voice barely rising above the patter of rain. "When I testify?" I looked ahead, hands in my pockets, eyes fixed on the empty sidewalk stretching toward the train station. "I'll be outside the door," I said, "but don't expect me to speak for you." She didn't argue. For the first time, she didn't ask me to carry her weight. And that, I realized, was the only way she might finally learn how to stand. Dad flipped through the folder like he expected to find something harmless. A mistake. A misunderstanding he could iron out with one of his practiced speeches. But I watched the change in his face, the twitch near his left eye, the shift in his jaw. It was like watching glass crack from the inside, silent, inevitable. Sophia sat next to me at the long, gleaming table, the same one where Dad used to hold his Monday morning meetings. The same one I wasn't allowed to sit at when I visited as a teenager because this is for real business, not feelings. Now here we were, side by side, real and ready. "You forged her signature," I said calmly, pointing to the 3rd tab in the binder. Dad didn't respond. He just flipped to the page. His hand paused when he saw my name on the legal line. Date, 2019. Account opened using a trust labeled LC Holdings. Beneficiary unknown. "It's a tax vehicle," he said finally, his voice clipped. "It didn't hurt anyone." "You used my social security number. That's identity fraud." "Let's all take a breath," the lawyer interjected, adjusting his collar. He looked like he hadn't expected this to escalate so quickly. "There's no need to—" Sophia cut him off. "There's a need." She opened the next file and slid it across the table. "These are transfers from shell companies you set up using Rachel's trust account and Jason's investment firm. Aunt Grace had a forensic accountant confirm it." The lawyer glanced at the documents and paled. Mom sat silently at the end of the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her pearls were crooked, her lipstick slightly smudged. "This isn't how family handles disputes," she whispered, almost to herself. I leaned forward. "This isn't a dispute. This is a reckoning." Dad's voice rose. "You don't understand how things work. Do you think this company just runs on sentiment? You think what we built here came without risks? Without decisions you don't get to judge because you didn't carry the weight?" "You didn't carry us either," I said. "Not when it mattered. We protected this family." "No," Sophia said. "You protected the image, the illusion, but you left the real work, the real consequences to us." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Legally speaking, the evidence is difficult to refute. If they go public with this, the risk of federal charges is—" "We're not looking to destroy it," I interrupted. "We're offering a choice. You step down, today, sign over full operational control, or we hand this to the authorities." Silence blanketed the room. Dad looked at Mom. She looked at him. Their faces didn't match anymore. He looked furious. She looked tired. Sophia reached into her briefcase and pulled out 2 prepared packets. We even had the transfer papers drawn up by Aunt Grace's attorney. Everything's ready. Dad didn't move. "Philip?" Mom said gently. Her voice broke. "Please." His hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed his name once, twice, then pushed the folder away like it burned him. Mom didn't sign. She just stood and walked out of the room. No scene, no parting words, just the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway lined with family portraits. I noticed one of them had a hairline crack in the glass, an old photo of all 4 of us at a company gala. Sophia in her first heels, me in a borrowed dress. I remembered that night. I'd spent the whole evening at the back table with the caterers. Sophia gathered the signed documents and placed them carefully into a clean folder. Her hands didn't shake this time. As we walked toward the door, I turned back one last time. Dad sat with his head bowed, shoulders hunched, eyes on nothing. The man who once lectured me about strength now looked like he didn't know how to exist without control. "You taught us power matters," I said quietly. "Now you've lost yours." We didn't wait for a reply. The elevator ride down was silent, but when the doors opened to the lobby, the air felt lighter. Not joyful, not yet, but free. Sunlight poured in through the glass windows, catching on the new bronze plaque near the front desk. Chen Holdings, founded 1992. Soon that would change. We stepped outside. The breeze smelled like wet pavement and possibility. That evening, I sat at Aunt Grace's dining table, sorting through notes for the restaurant concept I'd been shaping in the back of my mind for months. It wasn't just a dream anymore. I had the capital, I had the legal control, and now I had space. My phone rang. The number was one I didn't recognize, but the area code told me everything. "Lauren Chen?" the voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Olivia Matthews from the Venture Guild Fund. We've been following your work at Westbridge and your proposal for the Haven. If you're still interested, we'd like to schedule a meeting. We're ready to invest." I sat still for a moment, letting the words settle in. They didn't feel like fireworks. They felt like doors unlocking, quietly, one by one. "Yes," I said. "I'm interested." When I hung up, I didn't smile right away. I just closed my notebook, exhaled slowly, and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered in the distance. We had done it. Not just taken back what was ours, but built something entirely new. The sign above the door was new, soft cream letters on a dark wood panel. It read, "Clara Ara's Bakery." I stood on the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of my light jacket, watching the early evening light reflect off the clean glass windows. Inside, warm yellow bulbs glowed above polished counters and fresh trays of croissants and lemon shortbread. A small vase of lavender sat by the register, just like Aunt Grace used to keep near her kitchen sink. This was the same building where Dad once said, "Let her stay here. It suits her level." Now it stood as something reclaimed, not just a bakery, but a quiet rebellion turned into a tribute. "She'd love this," Sophia said beside me. Her hair was pulled into a low ponytail, and she was wearing flats, something I'd never seen her do when we were younger. Her voice had softened over the past year, not just in volume, but in how she spoke, less polished, more real. "She would," I said. "She always baked when things fell apart. Said it helped her measure something she could control." We didn't need to say her name. It was in everything around us. For a long time, neither of us moved. We just stood there, letting the scent of cinnamon and bread mingle with the early spring air. Eventually, we walked the rest of the block, past our old neighborhood, past the house with the creaky porch swing and the corner market that still hadn't fixed its flickering sign. It felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown. I was scared we'd end up just like them, Sophia said quietly as we crossed the street. All legacy, no love. We didn't, I replied. A few months later, I stood on the rooftop of a mid-rise in downtown Chicago, champagne in one hand, the city lights spread before me like a live mural. We had just signed the franchise deal for the 8th Haven location. 8th! I almost couldn't believe it. The Haven wasn't just a restaurant, it had become a gathering place. Part cafe, part co-working space, part sanctuary. Every location carried a different local flavor, but they all had the same heartbeat. Good food, good light, and a space that felt like you could exhale in it. Sophia managed the legal portfolio now. She spoke with confidence, signed contracts with the same hands that once trembled over a courtroom statement. We had built this together, not in spite of what we'd been through, but because of it. When the time came to speak, I kept it short. We were told our stories had no value, I said, raising my glass, so we wrote new ones. There was a pause, then the soft clinking of glasses. Not loud, not showy, just enough. Later, after the event, we drove back through the city. The night was quiet, but the street still held a pulse. I asked the driver to stop a few blocks early so we could walk. Sophia and I strolled side by side, heels clicking on the pavement. You ever miss it? She asked. The noise, the constant chase. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said, not anymore. We reached the corner where the streetlights pooled in soft golden circles on the sidewalk. The wind lifted my hair. A faint echo of piano drifted from an open window nearby. We stopped. There was no destination left to rush toward, no voice left to outprove, just us. Two sisters standing in the quiet after the storm. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. I just felt whole. As I stood under the soft glow of the street lamp, beside the sister I once thought I'd lost, I realized peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from walking away with your dignity intact. Some scars we inherit, others we earn. But healing begins the moment we choose to stop repeating old stories and start writing our own. Sometimes, the quietest victories are the ones that stay with us longest, the ones rooted in grace, not vengeance. If this story stirred something in you, I hope you'll take a moment to reflect, or even share your thoughts with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, we'll be right here waiting.